I was going to discuss the possibility of a railroad strike, a very high probability of a railroad strike coming in the United States very soon. This is coming from railroad workers being overworked, long hours, long hour shifts, and then oftentimes being expected to double that. This comes after COVID, when they let a whole bunch of railroad workers go in just an unfair fashion. Just however they could cut them, they cut them. And then they wanted them all to come back as soon as the work picked back up. Some came back, some did not. Those that did come back, those that stayed, now they're dealing with very long houred shifts, expecting to be doubling those shifts, and now also expected to be the only person on that train, doubling the work and increasing the lengths of these trains. So the railroad companies are really sticking it to their workers, and I feel like they're also creating an unsafe situation with that as well. But the railroad workers are trying to get whatever they can fixed on this, and no success. So bottom line is, we are very soon probably going to see these railroad workers are overworked. If it's not for any other reason than just to take a break, I think we're going to see at least a short strike, but probably even a longer one than that. But we're expecting them to at least take a break. They're just overworked. So what all do the railroads have to do with on this? They are the heavy freight backbone of freight movement in most countries. Throughout the U.S., that is how most railroad workers move. For each railroad worker, for the freight moved by the railroad, they move 100 times the freight that a truck driver moves. I'm sure you've heard the term at some point, and if you haven't, I'll say it and I'll explain it. If you bought it, a truck brought it. So, if you're able to buy it over there at the store, a truck brought it in. That's mostly true. There are some exceptions to that. If you're buying it from a local farm that was raising it right there, trucks probably brought in the fertilizer, but they didn't really bring in the produce. If you're buying it right there from that farm. But if you go down to the local store and buy it, truck brought it from that farm to that store more than likely. A lot of times these trains, if a truck brought it, the truck oftentimes also routed it through the trains. That's a very common part of that backbone. A lot of times it's taken by truck to a train, but then again, that's even less common than the if you bought it, a truck brought it philosophy. But it is still pretty heavy in some places, especially if you're in the middle part of the country. If it's not coming in by boat directly to you, living out a ways away from a seaport and it's an overseas item, there's a very good chance that a train brought it on one of the central legs. A truck brought it from the boat to the train yard, and then the train brought it down closer to you, and then a truck brought it from that rail terminal to your store. So the point behind me saying all this is a lot of things are handled by trains. So this is a logistical issue, a big logistical issue that can affect a lot of different industries. I think it's going to affect retail a lot, but a lot of pretty much things that are sold, things that are used, almost any consumable, probably construction stuff could even be affected by this. A lot of heavy stuff is brought by rail. Rail cars can hold a lot more than double what a semi-trailer can hold, weight-wise. So a lot of heavy stuff, a lot of heavy chemicals, things of that nature, a lot of times they're brought in by trains. You don't have train operators, you're not moving those trains. So there's going to be a lot of issues here, and we're going to discuss more about what we should expect and how we can prepare for this a little bit further on. But how bad are we expecting things to be? Are we expecting this to be a, climb up on your food stockpile and defend it with your 12 gauge type situation? Probably not. This is expected to be a widespread thing. It will probably affect most of the United States, and it will also affect countries that trade with the United States as well. A lot of stuff is not going to be moving very well in the United States during this event. So yeah, we're going to have issues with that, but it's also not going to be, I don't feel like it's going to be as extreme, because while the railroad companies are elites, the individual railroad workers are working class individuals. And I don't think that they will drag it on to a point of apocalyptic proportions. I think it will be a situation where, if it really does get to be, they're pulling their food from the same shelves that we pull our food from. They are having to live in the same neighborhoods that we live in. If things get to be crazy and chaotic because of it, that pressure is also on them. If they can't get things from their grocery store, that pressure is also on them. So, I don't think it's going to be as long of a lasting thing. I don't think it's going to be pushed to that much of an extreme. So yeah, let's take a little bit more of a look into what we can expect and how should we be prepared for this. So yeah, what to expect? Shortages at the store. That would mean limits on things, price hikes, things of that nature. Possibly even some craziness in the store. Kind of like COVID. I'm thinking this thing is going to be kind of like COVID over again, in the sense of what it did to the supply chain. Hopefully you've already stocked up. If you haven't, you want to do so pretty quickly, but at this point I would use caution around those stores, because there could be people who are ready to have fights in the toilet paper aisle or in the canned goods aisle or whatever else. Depends on how much people are panicking. A lot of people, I think, are more inclined to get to that panic state when they actually see that the strike's there and they actually start to see things are getting short on the shelves. It's a curve that happens. Right now there's going to be some people going to the store. Once they actually say, yes, the strike's actually happening, the trains aren't moving, those that realize that that's important to their own supplies, that this isn't just some faraway problem, it's going to affect their grocery store in a matter of days, then they're going to be more inclined to make a trip down there at that point. That's going to be more people that are going to be more inclined to do that at that point. As the store shelves empty out, more people will start to see the urgency of that and will be down there. So the earlier you stock up, the better. You should be always executing situational awareness anytime you go into any type of, anywhere you're outside the home. Know where your fire exits are. That's part of your situational awareness. Know where your emergency doors are, where your ways out are, of any place that you go on into. You should have always done that. You should already know where your fire exits are on the stores that you shop all the time. And if you haven't already known that, you want to get to know that. But nowadays, you also want to take a better look and seeing that they are not blocked, they're not chained off. If there is something blocking one door, be aware of that, because you don't want to fight your way through smoke if something does turn into something a bit more than just a squabble in the toilet paper aisle. If somebody gets really nuts, you want to know of a way to get out of there if it becomes an emergency. And you don't want to be traveling through chaos, fighting your way on over to an emergency exit that happens to be chained shut or has a pallet dropped in front of it. So using caution there probably brings some type of protection from that type of craziness. I wouldn't recommend bringing your AK. That's especially not with this day and age with all the active shooters. You probably won't last long enough to use your food storage if you did. Somebody would mistake you for one of those. It's not up to that. That's a bit inappropriate at this point to be bringing such. Something like pepper spray or something else concealable, pepper spray on the keychain, that would be appropriate for this. But this is not, I don't really consider this situation to be a doomsday scenario yet. Now, if it drags on a bit further, if it really does become more than what I'm expecting it to be, yes, I would be a lot more concerned. But for right now, yeah, I would just say stock up. But if you are stocking up now, if you're using this as a cue, use caution when you go to the store. Know your exits. Carry your pepper spray or whatever you carry. But, within appropriate measures. Leave the AK at home. So, yeah, stock up. That's one thing that you do. And fuel shortages. A lot of fuel has been hauled by trains, and trains also oftentimes haul the fuel for the trucks, which means this could also cause some troubles with trucking and other logistics, supporting services. Maybe you might not deal directly with something there, but you could be dealing with somebody who deals with the trains and could be backed up in there. I think this is going to be a lot bigger than we oftentimes give it credit for. But yeah, fuel shortages, I do expect that to be significant. So definitely I would keep over half a tank, especially if you're driving out away from home. Make sure you always have enough fuel to get somewhere safe. Have that fuel on hand in the event you run across a lot of pumps that are out of service. You don't want to have that. Make sure you got the fuel to get you by. Utility outages are also a good possibility. Could be with power plants not being able to get what they need. It could also be a matter of utility supply companies just not being able to, water plants might not be able to get their chemicals. You might have issues with, sure, your power plant might stay running. Maybe it gets everything it needs through pipelines and it's going to be fine. But if the wind blows over a power pole, will the utility company be able to replace that power pole? So there is a good possibility, yes, you could deal with utility outages that could be prolonged longer than usual. Stock up on your water, your fuel, a generator, any of those things here that you plan on using, a way to deal with waste in the event that becomes a problem. Make sure that you have what you need in place to be able to handle that. Now, I'm not expecting this to be a very significant problem for nuclear power plants. Worst that would happen is that they would do a scram on it and they would shut it down safely. As far as one running away because it can't get power or something like that, that's not what we're dealing with on this. That would be a full-scale supply chain shutdown that would cause that, possibly. But this being a limited item here, sure. The trains are down. Trucks can route around, but there's limited trucks. We're already struggling with the number of trucks as it is. So we can't just totally have the trucks take over for the trains. But if it comes down to a situation like a nuclear plant needs something, they will pull from whatever they need to get that need done. If they need to airlift things in, it will be done. They're going to take care of nuclear plants, so I wouldn't worry about a meltdown at one of those. Not just from this alone. But yeah, I would definitely be worried about, possibly scramming, possibly them deciding to shut it down, possibility of loss of utilities because of also infrastructure that they can't replace. For example, the power pole. All right, shipping, a lot of things go through shipping and stuff of that nature. So yeah, expect delays on your shipping, expect delays on your travel. You may even end up with, a lot of times those trains, they're expecting a certain number of them to be moving down the tracks. If they park them all, then where are they going to put them all? I don't think there's enough room in the rail yards to do it. So there's a possibility, I don't know about how it would work, but there is a possibility that they might be parked across your favorite railroad crossing. Just have a train parked there. It is a possibility. So I would expect travel issues, especially if you're planning on traveling or shipping by rail. But even if you're not going by rail, there is a possibility that rail could affect it. A lot of things are handled by rail. But do expect delays, and stay tuned to what's going on so that way you know what you need to react to next, because it's not just going to be one set of things. Now, yes, I may come up with some of these videos when I see that something is happening. So, but don't treat me as your main source of news. Look at other stuff. This would be something I would want to tune into my local radio station for. During this type of an event, if I did deal with power outages, I'm not really planning on running any non-essential computers, and the computers that I use to edit these videos are overly powered and not essential. So I probably won't be producing very much during the time period of such an emergency if I lose power during this. This whole railroad strike thing could be as early as tomorrow, or even in the next few days. Maybe they might cool off for a little bit longer before they do it, but I know they can start sometime over the next few days. So it's something to look into, certainly something to be ready for. So make sure you're stocked up on anything that you need to be stocked up on. Make sure your fuel stays over half a tank. Fill it up over half a tank. Don't let it leave your driveway unless it's over half a tank. When you get to half a tank, I would fill it right away. I would not wait. And make sure that you have everything that you need to take care of. You've got water. You've got spare water at your house. You might not be able to get bottled water to your tap. If there is an issue with chemicals coming in by rail, could be a problem. Make sure you have fuel for your generator. It doesn't do any good to have a generator if you don't have fuel for it. Cooking fuels, everything else like that. Expect delays and try and stay tuned as best you can. While I won't be running essential computers, probably, I would still probably be running like NOAA weather radio and maybe an AM/FM little radio or something like that. Just minor stuff that doesn't use a lot of power. I would still stay tuned in with that, but I wouldn't be running big systems if I lost power. Thank you for watching.